With me today is Anya Gore of Connected Consciousness, and I think I said that sideways. Sorry, Connected Souls.
Connected souls, yeah.
But connecting the consciousness is a good thing too. But Anya and I have known each other now for several years. She's been a tremendous help for Hayo, for Pepe, when they've had difficulties. And let's see if I can do this correctly. My brain's a wee bit slow as well, but this is her website. She's been working in a lot of different realms, obviously, including sort of team training, if you will, or more creating you as the guide for your pet. But Connected Souls is what her business is, that helps her help pet parents understand what it is that pets need from us while they're still on the planet, and more importantly, if they've gone on, to help us sort of reconcile with our loss. So, Anya, I'm so delighted to see you today, um, because what you are able to do to help so many people with their pets is just amazing. You really helped when my mother died, and Haya was my mom's dog. You really helped us help her understand what her new life was going to be about and sort of how to acclimate to that. So thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you. You're most welcome, and it's lovely to see you again.
Absolutely. So if you would talk a little bit about what you're doing currently, how you're able to help folks.
Well, my work is always quite varied through animal communication, so whatever people need will be what I'll be doing to some extent. But my focus recently has been very, very much on how we can be with our animals who aren't well, who are sick or languishing or have problems with their health, and especially as they're reaching the end of their lives. Because maybe this is serendipitous or whatever the word is, or just how the universe works. But as you know, I recently went through the death of my beloved dog Zoe, and that was just over three months ago now. And while we were going through that time together, she and I were in constant conversation and communication, and she helped me to clarify a lot of the stuff that I already knew and felt about how we can best accompany our animals when they're ill and when their lives are ending specifically. And she really helped me focus that better. And we went through what was an anguished but blessed time together. And as it so happens, since she passed over, since she transitioned, whatever word we want to use, first of all, not only has she been with me constantly, and we continue our conversation, and she's with me all the time. If I ask her to come, she's here, and so she's guiding me a lot these days. And we're in fact working on something together at the moment. But also, what's happened is that I've actually had a great number of clients who are going through something similar. So it's just been my focus recently, and because of that, what I wanted to talk about, with you today was kind of focused on that, simply because it's something that I think we all will go through at some time, whether we like it or not. You as a vet will know this better than anyone. And when we have a pet, the likelihood is we will lose them at some point. Actually, to me, that's a slightly less awful scenario than them losing us. That was one of my great fears during COVID when it started, was that I would die before Zoe died, or my cats,
Really?
and would have, yes. So I because I do have an extreme sense of connection and responsibility with my animals, but I was very worried. So let's say that the likelihood is we will at some point have to go through our animals' death, transition. We can call it what we want. My belief and my own experience is that it is a transition, that we don't end, that the essence remains. It's just this physical form that isn't here anymore. And so what I did, and I've prepared this booklet, which we can link to your viewers, and I'm going to put on my website too later, which is a sort of collation, I suppose, of common themes that I've found with a lot of clients now who have been wondering how to know when it's the right time, how to be with their animal, and so on. Oh yes, there it is.
Yes, there it is.
Yes. Yes.
I'm a wee bit slow, but
people will be able to sign up for that, after the call.
right.
So it's a kind of what I put together are common themes that I have come across again and again, and some thoughts and ideas. So it's only a starting point. It's something that will give people perhaps some ideas which might be slightly different from what they'd thought of up to now.
Expected. Yeah.
Yes. And I hope essentially that it will be some kind of comfort to people and reassurance. And, these are general themes that have come up. And then, of course, there's always, and this is key, the specific desires of each specific animal. So that's where my work really comes in as an animal communicator, because I can help people to understand very specifically what their animal would like. We can't always
Right.
give it, but we can try, and if we can't, we can always discuss it with them and come to a compromise. So I think what I'm passionate about is that animals, we animal communicators always talk about giving animals a voice and so on. Well, animals have a voice. They have a voice. They have an opinion. They have a purpose. And I see my role not so much as giving them a voice, but as helping them transmit that voice. It's not me. It's not mine to give, if you see what I mean. It's their voice.
Right. You're just the translator, and that's often what I felt like I was doing for pets, was translating their desires to their people.
That's
Is
right.
that a fair
That
analysis?
feels more like a translator and an interpreter or whatever.
Yes.
And trying to be as as true, obviously, to what they are, what they're wanting to express. So does that give you a bit of an answer to your question?
It does. So what, and you mentioned, and this is wonderful that you've put this booklet together, because I think it's a great starting point for so many people. But what do you find are some of the general themes that you've been hearing from animals over the years, what they want to tell their people?
Well, for me, the kind of baseline, and I think I put this on practically on the first page of the booklet, is if they had to choose one thing, our animals would choose simply to be with us. So that underlies all the rest of what I wrote and, well, what I believe. And that is so hard for us often, isn't it? This world we live in, which is so full of busyness and responsibilities and things we have to do and tasks and distractions and all of that, is they adapt, our animals, but it is to a degree painful to them. That's my experience. It was my experience with Zoe. Certainly in our later years together, she would be constantly nagging me to get off the computer, to get off my phone. And
Yes.
she was right. But, our world is made that way these days. And in a sense, thank goodness, because I wouldn't be able to do my work without my computer. So I'm not
Yes.
poo-pooing it or anything, but I'm just saying that sometimes out of balance. And I think when we have these moments, these months or weeks with an animal who's reaching the end of their life, or even, is just unwell for a time, that is a call to non-action, not a call to action, a call to be, a call to just stop. And it doesn't have to be 24 hours a day, because we couldn't do that, but it can just be for a few moments. And in those few moments, have absolute presence as far as we can manage it. It's not so easy for us. But as I suggest in the booklet, it's not really a book, a booklet, is perhaps you can decide that it isn't difficult after all and just do it anyway. We've got this idea that it's difficult to be present, but actually I'm wondering if it really is. All it takes is a bit of breathing. I love breathing, a bit of just grounding, a bit of noticing the details. And
Yes.
so that's something I became extremely attuned to with Zoe, was the preciousness of each nuance, of each little detail of whatever she was doing or not doing or whatever, with that kind of piercing, heart-rending knowledge that it might be the last time she's doing that. And yet using that reality not to make life even heavier, but to make it more precious. So it's using that knowledge of grief to come, or possibly grief that's already there because of the loss of certain capabilities in your animal or things you used to do together. It's using it in a positive way so that it helps you really treasure what is here and now. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I spent some time with my aunt and uncle that are in their late 80s. And I think that's sort of what we get stuck on, is the what used to be that we don't have anymore, instead of where we are at the moment and being in the
Mm.
present moment. And yes, they can't walk and do the things they want to do, but there they are, very much in love. They married much later in life, after my uncle lost his first wife, my aunt. And golly, that's the one thing they can get back to, that they're so grateful to be with each other. Uh,
Mm.
but I think that's very telling. And with our pets, and what I've seen with clients, is they get so caught up in the fact that the pet has this horrible disease that is going to take them away, that they forget to enjoy the time that is still remaining. And yes,
Exactly.
maybe they can't take that mile walk with us anymore, but they can walk outside and we can sit at the end of the sidewalk and just enjoy what is there in front of us.
Yes, yes,
But you're
exactly.
right. I mean, our world does not want us to be present in that way. It wants us to be stuck at the box all of the
Mm.
time.
Mm.
So that's,
Exactly. So it's their
yeah,
essence. Their essence is still there, however little they're able to do physically, and their essence remains when they pass over. For sure, their
yes,
essence becomes very powerful indeed. And I must just say that all of these things I chat about are obviously on top of, or as a background to, all the necessary care that they need, the veterinary and complementary
right.
veterinary care. So I'm not saying that we just sit there looking lovingly into our dog's eyes and do nothing to help them. No, I'm not saying that. This is just as a background to what is kind of taken as read, which is all the care that we have as responsible guardians. So
Yes,
I
yes,
think,
absolutely.
yeah, and I think a question people are very concerned about, understandably, is when is it the right time to let their animal go. And, myself, I went through that whole questioning. It's agonizing. That
Yes.
isn't it? That responsibility. My feeling is, having gone through it recently, but having gone through it, of course, several times in my life before, is that we mustn't be in a state of judgment of how anybody chooses to do this. Generally, my experience is that our animals, if they're asked, their preference is to die naturally. They don't choose to be euthanized generally. For a start, they need to have it explained to them what it actually means. If it's going to be that, I always explain in detail what it would entail for them, so they're not surprised and all of this. Their choice would be to die naturally, because death is a natural process. So it's not always possible. Sometimes,
Yes.
sometimes an animal might die suddenly, of course. We're talking here about a disease that we are seeing happening, that's progressing, and we're not talking about an accident or some drama that was unexpected. But I think it's a choice, and I do feel it's important not to judge ourselves or anyone else for which way they choose to go. So if I can talk about Zoe for a minute, I don't want to only talk about Zoe.
Please do.
It's an example
Yes.
that is close to me. She had a preference to go on her own, and she had a very, very clear preference that she wanted to be at home. Well, I agreed with that. It was actually took quite a bit of organising for that to be possible, because we don't have here where we live, a service for a vet to come to the house. So I managed to find someone who would. So we managed that in the end, because at the end she did need a helping hand. At the very, very end, she may have faded away without it. I'm not sure, but the time was right. She told me, and I really felt it. But even up to the moment it was due to happen, I had doubts. I didn't know if it was really right. Should I be letting her just fade? And we don't know if we got it right. And as far as our animals are concerned, there is no right or wrong. All they care about is that they know we're doing whatever we're doing from love and from the greatest awareness that we have access to. And they are mostly at that stage already. I know this was her case, in and out of their bodies a lot, and actually out of their bodies more than they're in them. They're practicing the whole process of moving on. And it's almost a little detail. What matters to them much more than whether it's with a final injection or whether it's just fading away in their sleep or whatever. What matters to them is our presence, our love, and being there if we possibly can. And I know it's not always possible. And the last thing I would want in bringing this whole thing up, or in writing my booklet, would be that anyone should feel bad. I feel that if you can take away one or two ideas from that, that will already be absolutely amazing. And, I doubt I've been perfect in how I've handled it, but I've done the best I can. And I'm sure we all try that. We all do the best we can.
And
And
that's, at the end of the day, that's all you can do. I mean,
yeah,
just you make your choices based on what you're seeing, what you think will be the best to serve your pet.
and also what
And
you can handle in terms, sorry, Ruth, to interrupt,
yes,
also what you can handle if you are accompanying an animal who's really sick and ill, and it takes, 24/7 care. The last weeks of her life, I was next to her and, didn't move from there really at all. So it depends what your life permits you to do, really allows you to do. Sorry to
yes, yeah.
interrupt.
And that was always such an interesting, and I hate to say it that way, it sounds very clinical, but it was always such an interesting thing to me to see how people wrestled with that choice and how they decided. And and thankfully, I mean, there in the US anyway, there are more hospice practicing veterinarians available. And what we really need is palliative care. And that's what I found I was doing in my last years in my brick and mortar practice was how can we provide as much comfort as possible for
Mm.
this animal, for this dog, for our beloved cat, without removing them from consciousness totally, um, but keeping them comfortable at the same time
Mm.
until
Mm.
either they can, and it felt like they had to have a certain amount of energy to be able to actually transition, for lack of a better word, on their own, or to get to the point where they're like, "Yeah, I need a little help." And
That's right.
it became abundantly clear that what they were okay with and what they were not okay with.
Yes. And I think it's true, isn't it, that when if an animal has had a lot of medication, it was Zoe's case, that actually sometimes it's very hard for them to die on their own.
Yes,
The
yeah,
medication makes sort of complicates it.
it does. It does, and I think when my mother was ill and in her last several days of dying, and the way we do hospice in the U.S. is um, with a lot of morphine, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but with a lot of anti-anxiety medications as well. And so I think that is part of what can make it difficult for people to
Mm.
move forward because they are. It almost felt like my mom got sort of stuck outside of her body at times, and so she had, and I feel that happens with pets. We tend to be a little heavy-handed with sedatives like
Mm.
trazodone and
Mm.
things of this nature.
Mm. Mm.
Um, so it's very very strange sometimes.
It's such an almost an artificial situation of power over another's life, um,
Yeah.
isn't it? I mean, it's obviously power with love and consciousness, but it's 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 one of these, I think, essential moments in life. It's one of the things where things get immediately put into perspective of what really matters, and that will be different for all of us. Um,
Yeah, I'd have to agree.
yeah, and I think that animals, the ones I've talked to, all have um, when that question is asked, when is it the right time? They really clearly will let the person know if they've still got something they need to do. Things aren't quite finished for them, and if they want, and often they have a job they're still wanting to do in their life,
Yes,
to do with their
yes.
purpose, to do with why they're here, and to help their person as well.
And I had a dog, Arnold, many years ago, and that was his thing. He was not ready to go until I was okay. And he was such a valiant
Mm.
dog, and such a sweet pup. But that was his thing. He was not going until I was prepared to lose him.
Yes. Yeah.
And that is so courageous and so selfless. But I think many of
Completely.
our pets do that with us.
Yes.
It's, but it is really hard, and I think that people don't give their pets credit to know that, yeah, I'm good, I'm ready to roll, or no, I'm really not ready. Um, and because so much of our medical care, even the birth of our children, has been scheduled to the convenience of the doctor, that's
Mm.
part of what the loss of translation is
Mm.
for
Mm.
euthanasias and for end of life care. It's
Yeah,
sort of on our schedule and not that individual's.
that's right. That's right. I mean, it's a vast subject, and I think it is useful to address it before the moment comes. You know, just knowing that the moment will probably come one day,
Well,
without being morbid, but just to see what options might exist, and to think about some of, you know, perhaps some of the ideas I put forward there, because to be honest, I believe they're good ideas for living anyway. It's not just while our pets are sick and while they're dying. I think there's value in some of these ideas just as a way to live.
yeah, I mean, if I think the world would be a much happier place if we all of us spent at least 3 minutes of each day just being present. And in fact, it's very funny because that's the new um, darling of the biohackers is 30 minutes of white space every day because it has to be programmed in, right? But but that's the truth, and what that means literally is just go sit outside, go
Yeah,
play with your children, go play with your pets, and feel free to take your mind off of everything. And I think that is just so critical.
so
We're so
critical.
busy and so distracted.
I know, complete madness. And I think connecting with nature is absolutely key for me, certainly. But I think we all need it. Even if we live in the middle of a city, we can find something. We can find a tree, we can find a patch of grass, something. We can look at the sky. Hopefully, we might see a bird. You know, any small connection to nature is vital for just rebalancing us and re-energizing us and getting things back into perspective again.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's why the all of these things like forest bathing and grounding and things of this nature are becoming such a big deal because people are realizing that with disconnection from the planet that we've sort of really lost our way. And I apologize, I failed to charge my computer
Ah,
adequately before we got on, so I've got to go back to a power source. But this is absolutely critical, I think, for such all of us is to reconnect with nature, make sure that we're in touch with the planet because we're
yes,
all magnetic beings, if you will. And without that connection, I think we really get sidetracked and
totally.
run
I
into
mean, yeah,
difficulties. Yeah,
yeah. You know, and nature is not something outside of us. That's what we also forget. We are part of nature. It's in us. We are
indeed.
in it. We are one. We
We
are
are
one.
all we are all one human family. We are all one with the planet.
Mm.
We are all one with the all of the creatures and the plants and everything. And that sounds
Yeah,
that may sound wacky and crazy, but I know it does not to you. But I
up to
firmly
me.
believe that.
Yeah. Oh, I
That's
mean,
what
it,
we've yeah. That was the gift of for me of actually getting mold and being able to travel was to reconnect to nature and be outside. So
mm,
it's just so critical.
yeah,
And Pepe,
absolutely.
Pepe absolutely demands it. He's like, it's, really, I'm stuck in this place for
He's
another
missing
two
it
weeks.
at the moment.
Yeah,
Yes. Well,
yeah. So we,
hopefully soon will he be able to go out.
yeah. Well, and actually, well, so that's kind of what I do. He gets so unhappy about it that there's a really lovely lawn out in this inn where we're staying, and so that's what I'll do is take him outside and get to sort of a protected area where he can be hidden and be his cat self and be sheltered. But he'll get some outside time and he'll be able to be
Okay.
on the ground and look at birds and things of this nature. So that will
Yeah.
help him tremendously. And then Hio will come too, and she'll be sort of, oh, okay. But yeah. Well, golly. So, Anya, I'm going to put the link or the page back up, but this booklet is, as you said, the goal here is to give people a set of general understandings about what you've heard from other animals and including Zoe, so that people can begin to sort of think their way through this, because that's the other difficulty, is that in our society we have so much fear about death, um, that we don't know what to do with that. So I
No.
think this will be wonderful for so many pet parents that know that their pet is quite elderly or their pet is sick, to have a baseline of where to start. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes, completely. Well, I hope people will find it helpful. I know that for my clients individually, certainly finding out what their own animal needs and having the conversation has been a great help. And yeah, we are afraid of death. It is taboo in our society. Of course it is. And, you know, as I always say, it's my physical me that misses Zoe's physical me. I still really miss that physicality, that, cuddling her and hearing her howl at the wild boar, and all the things. And
Yeah,
yet she's so very much with me in spirit. Her being is with me obviously in a vaster way, in a more expansive way, but she is here. But we're still physical beings. We still miss other physical beings, or the physical part of them. That's human. That's normal.
yes.
And we just have to accept it, and allow also the pain when it comes. That's one thing she taught me very clearly when I was desperately grieving, straight after she passed. And it was just not to resist it, just to go with it, just to move through that pain, to move through it. It is an opening of the heart, which is important, I believe. And it's just not to block it, not to fear it. Remember, it's an expression, or not an expression so much, a reflection of how much we've loved, is how greatly we feel the loss. And yet beyond that anguish, there is something huger and even more amazing.
Yes, that makes sense. That's sort of one of the other difficulties of our society. We're taught to ignore the emotions, the painful ones, because we've somehow convinced ourselves that they're bad, but they are indeed a pathway to a different understanding.
Totally. And
So
and
thank you.
also, oh, and sorry, Ruth,
Yeah.
yes,
No, no,
also
no. Please go.
one, one thing that is very, very clear with our animals, I found this again and again, is how they know what's going on with us anyway. And so we want to be genuine. And if we're sad, I think we should just be sad with them. I cried into Zoe's side many a time and just let her know. I didn't even need to let her know, but I expressed it honestly instead of pretending, because we can't pretend with them. Um, you know, Certainly or often in my work, the animals will come up with something for their person, which is extremely astute that I didn't know. And so, that they know what's going on. They know us better than anyone, probably. They see us with all our warts and difficulties and everything, and they love us through all of that. And so I think it's important to be genuine, to say, look, I'm really, really anxious about this. I don't know which is the best way to go. I don't know whether we should do this or that, and I'm so sad at losing you, and I can't bear the thought of it. Just open. And
And be real.
that's also part of their role, often, that they choose, is to comfort us. So
That
they
is
are
the truth.
amazing.
They are amazing with that.
Mhm.
And that's the difficulty, isn't it? In their own physical process of dying, of leaving the shell, of leaving the body, that they are still able to bring us comfort.
Mm.
if we're
Extraordinary.
paying enough
Yeah,
attention to receive it. Yeah.
yeah. If we've stopped long enough to notice, really.
Wow. Yeah. That's just, never was it so. Golly. Um, I'm not sure which channel folks are on. If you're on YouTube, unfortunately on Facebook, it doesn't bring the comments through. But if you've got questions for Anya, please post them up. Please do go to the link and get her booklet. Anya has a knack for sort of getting to what the pet is trying to express to us, and interpreting the images, sounds, things of that nature that they send to, in a way that we can understand what they're asking. And so I cannot recommend strongly enough, if you're in a position where you are struggling with an elderly pet, or a pet that's got some sort of a chronic disease process that's beginning to look like it may be the end, or even if it's not, sometimes they can tell us what they're okay with and what they're not okay with, and also many times what they actually need.
Mm.
Instead of us putting our brains in there and thinking, well, we'll just do this program. And sometimes it's not what they need. But they can often tell us what plants, what foods will be the medicine, rather than what we think it should be. So, having said all that, any last parting words of wisdom, Anya, that you can offer? I mean, you've given so much already.
I think through all of these challenges, remember to be kind to yourselves and don't expect some idea of perfection. Just keep your hearts open and listen to your animals in whatever way you can. And know that it's not the end, even when they do leave their bodies.
Amen. Thank you so much for joining today, and I look forward to seeing where you go in the future. But if you're not familiar with Anya's work, do go check out the link I put in, which will let you sign up for her booklet about the information she has received from animals over the years, and then you can learn a bit more about how she works as well. So until next time, take good care. I'm Dr. Ruth Roberts, and Anya Gore is with me, and